no game on today, nor tomorrow. I don't think the next day either. We're just sitting here waiting for the World Series to start. What is this, football? Well, let me tell you something. We have the matchup set up. We know it's going to be Philadelphia versus Houston. Let's look at the Houston point of view with friend of the podcast, HTown Wheelhouse of Locked On Astros. This is Locked On MLB.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. I have a low third somewhere. There it is. Feel free to call me Sully. I am an Emmy-nominated television producer. I've been a comedian, a filmmaker, a writer. I've written for magazines. I've appeared on HBO talking baseball. And I've been podcasting about baseball for over 10 years. In fact, my 10th anniversary was just the other day for the Old Sully Baseball Show. And now I've been part of the Locked On Podcast Network for the last 4 seasons. And we are the podcast that doesn't mind if a podcaster has credentials or is in the locker room. Those of you may know what that's all about. We welcome everyone to have a podcast. Everybody can have a podcast. You have a podcast. You have a podcast. And you have one too. If you're in the live stream, you're watching us there, send in something in the chat. Keep it clean. Or don't keep it clean. If you don't keep it clean, I'll just read a sterilized version of it. Hey, follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and on Instagram. And I am your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. My guest today is making his, I've done, about nearly 1,000 episodes of Locked On MLB. And I think my guest today has been on half of them. He's been on the show a bunch, but that's because there's a lot to talk about with his team. And, it's the two of us have sometimes tussled and disagreed about some stuff, but I think it's safe to say it's good to be an Astros fan right now. It's good to be one, and it's good to have back on Brett Chancey, otherwise known as HTown Wheelhouse, from the Wheelhouse Cave, somewhere in an undisclosed location under stately Chancey Manor in Houston, Texas. How you doing, buddy?
Man, I'm doing great, Sully. If you would have told me that the Astros would have 2 years in a row where they go to the World Series and have a chance to win it against an NL East team, I would say, I think you're crazy. But this year, I don't think the narrative is that crazy because this Astros team, this pitching staff has been absolute lockdown, about as solid and perfect.
Locked on.
Oh, sorry. Locked on. That's right.
Keep on brand. Come on.
My bad. So I recently wrote an article for 103.7 The Game, who I'm a correspondent for now. I talk to them every week. I talk to RP3 and company down there. And the title of my article is Perfection Isn't Always Perfect. And the perfect record, it isn't perfect, but they found a way.
Right. Well, I mean, look at the Astros are now the third team in the history of the current incarnation of the postseason to go into the World Series with a perfect record. Now, the other two teams were the 2007 Rockies and the 2014 Kansas City Royals. And I think the interesting thing about both of them, the Rockies had to play. It was not the wild card game, but it kind of was. They had to play a 1-game playoff with the San Diego Padres for the wild card, of which they were 3 outs away, and Trevor Hoffman on the mound from losing that game. They would have been a 1 and out and totally forgotten that they even made the postseason. And Hoffman blew the save. And that Kansas City Royals team had to play a wild card game. And they did against Oakland, and twice in that same game, they were 2 outs away from losing. The A's were on the verge of eliminating Kansas City, and they came back in both the ninth inning and the 11th inning to win that game. And then they went on the Rockies swept Philadelphia and swept Arizona to go to the World Series. And that Kansas City team swept the Mike Trout Angels, his lone appearance in the postseason, and then stunningly shut the Orioles, who I thought were much better than them, in the ALCS. Now, the interesting thing is both of those teams, the Rockies and the Royals, wound up losing the World Series. The Rockies got swept by Boston, who just were better. And the Royals got to a thriller in Game 7 against San Francisco, where the winning run was at the plate when Salvador Perez popped up against Madison Bumgarner, and the Giants won that series. So the perfect postseasons did not end perfectly for those two teams. This Astros team, unlike those other two teams, are not massive underdogs who fought their way from the wild card all the way to a shocking pennant. The Astros won a pennant that they were supposed to win, and they did.
They did. And when you look at the last two teams, we know 2017 won it, but you look at 2019 and 2021, they get to the LCS. They come against a Nationals team. They get to the World Series. They come against a Nationals team that just was a team of destiny. They get to the Braves team, who basically was powered by 4 free agent signings and Will Smith, who's now a Houston Astro and will probably make his way on the World Series staff. When you compare the bullpens, the bullpen this year, you don't even hold a candle to this bullpen from the other two teams.
Oh, absolutely not. No, absolutely.
Because when I look at the stat sheet, I was looking at the press notes the other day, and I was like, wait, they're all zeros. They haven't given up a run. They actually literally give up 3 runs in 30 innings as relief pitchers. This is insane. And I think it's the perfect antithesis to the hot-hitting Phillies, and that's what we'll talk about today.
Well, I mean, look at one of the most amazing things is obviously the ERA that they had, the group ERA they had against New York was off the charts, just tremendous. Their group ERA in the series against Seattle was 2.25 over those 3 games, and that includes the 6 runs led up by Justin Verlander in his shaky Game 1. He let up 6 earned runs, and the rest of the team let up 3 for the entire series. You can't have an 18-inning game on the road that's a shutout and not be in awe of the pitching staff. You were on the podcast in September, and we talked about this. We talked about how, you know what? I was saying, like, well, is it going to be the Yankees? Is it going to be Toronto? Is it going to be Seattle? Is it going to be Cleveland? And I actually thought Cleveland had a shot to. I was cute when I picked them. I thought they're going to upset the Astros. But, I was saying the pitching staff that Houston has right now is just such heads and shoulders above everyone else. It's so insanely deep. I mean, we were talking at one point when I had you on in that episode this last September. I was saying, I don't know, should Hunter Brown get a start? Should who's the other one I thought? Should Luis Garcia get a start? And as it turned out, they were both critical to use out of the bullpen, especially Garcia in the series against Seattle. And it just, if someone didn't have a great game, it's like McCullers didn't have a great game in Game 4 against New York. And then some of the announcers were saying, like, why isn't Dusty taking him out? Because he knows that, you know what? Well, he pushed him for 5 innings. So they didn't have to bring in one of their relievers in the 3rd or 4th. Pushed them to 5. They knew they knew the game was tied at that point. And they also said that, okay, but we know we can turn to Neris and everybody else. And it just, everything ran perfectly to script. And that depth is what carried them past a very good Seattle team and obviously a talented Yankee team.
And I would say that Seattle was the better competition overall. I mean, give Seattle, 7 games, maybe they turn things around in one of those games. And we knew going into Seattle that it was going to be a ruckus. It was going to be loud. It was their first playoff game in 21 years. everybody was there. Well, funny with Greinke was there with his family. They were all dressed in Mariners gear because they have friends and family that are from Washington. They're from Seattle. And
God,
so
I love
Zach
Greinke.
Greinke was
I love Zach Greinke.
incognito. He was in his Bass Pro Shop hoodie and a Bass Pro Shop bucket fishing hat, and nobody recognized him. But I'm like, if I would have seen him, I would have recognized that guy for sure.
Of course he would.
But Luis Garcia, Sully, this guy sits on a staff that boasts 7 bona fide starters, 4 of which could be aces. And Luis Garcia could easily sit down with a coach and make a case that he should be one of those 4 starters.
Yeah.
Of course, he's got Christian Javier in his way, but he's still very good. And we haven't even seen Jose Urquidy once. Jose Urquidy is the only person on this pitching staff that has a 3-0 record in the World Series.
Yeah.
So he's got the most World Series wins of any pitcher, and we've yet to see him. But
I mean,
going,
sorry, keep going. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you in there.
That's okay. But going back to Luis Garcia, when he came out, and credit to Dusty, because Eric and I, and probably more so me than Eric, I've been, I guess, hypercritical, right? I think I've been too quick to jump the gun with different roster moves, different lineup moves, different bullpen moves. But Dusty Baker has conducted an absolute master class, and I think done the best job of deploying a bullpen that he's ever done in his career. And I said at the beginning of the playoffs, the X factor for the Astros is not Jordan, is not JV, it's Dusty Baker.
Yeah. And we've seen how he handled the series where he trusts certain pitchers to go, push them an extra inning, or know that, all right, you gave us what I need from you. I need you ready for tomorrow if need be, and pull him. Look, you can't fault anything he's done. The pitching has been what's carried him to this point. And they've really had only 2 mediocre starts. The Verlander in Game 1 against Seattle was lousy, and McCullers in the clincher game wasn't great. But he kept McCullers in long enough so he didn't blow his bullpen out, and the bullpen did their job for the rest of this game. You think about Seattle. Seattle was 2 swings away from being up 2-1 in that series.
Yep.
They had the lead with 2 outs at the bottom of the 9th, and Robbie Ray led up the home run to Alvarez. It was
Alvarez in Game 1.
Yeah, Alvarez was Game 1. That's right, and it was Pena in the finale. But there was what? As I said when I had Eric on, it was the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, or 17th inning. If the Mariners hit a home run in any of those innings, they win that game, and we're not talking perfect playoff. If both of those games, they get the final out in Game 1, and they push 1 run across in extra innings before the 18th in Game 3, they're up 2-1.
That's right.
And we're having a very different conversation here. And maybe Zach Greinke's had another game in Seattle. But the fact of the matter is, I can just tell you, the way Dusty's been managing, there are Houston fans all over Texas who are willing to just give the shirt off their back to Dusty Baker. Let's talk about shirts for a second.
Yeah.
What can you tell me about shirts?
So dress shirts are tricky. It's hard to find one that fits just right while also being comfortable and that matches your style. And we know you're a stylish guy, Sully.
Oh, yeah,
Plus, with all the hustle and bustle that you got going on, you need a dress shirt that looks good enough to get the deal done at work. Whether you're hanging out with Steve Carell or you're taping a classic series about the Boston Red Sox, it's got to be comfortable enough to play catch with your kids and dropping them off at practice. And see, the dress shirt was due for a radical renovation, kind of like the Astros after they lost 100 games in 3 straight seasons. Rhone stepped up to the challenge. Rhone's commuter shirt is the most comfortable, breathable, and flexible shirt known to man, and here's why. Mobility is everything. Rhone's comfortable 4-way stretch fabric provides breathability and flexibility that leaves you free to enjoy what life throws your way. Looking good is easy. It's time to feel confident with the wrinkle-free shirt without the hassle. With Rhone's wrinkle release technology, wrinkles disappear, kind of like runs on the scoreboard when the Astros relief pitchers are on the mound. And it's an easy shirt to go with because it's got odor-free technology. With Gold Fusion anti-odor technology, even Rignet Odor would smell good in this shirt. The technology, you'll be smelling fresh and clean all day long. And on top of that, Rhone is 100% machine washable. So you can ditch the dry cleaner altogether. The commuter shirt can get you through the workday. This is what I want you to do. Go to Rhone.com/locked on and use the promo code locked on to save 20% on your entire order. That's 20% off your entire order when you go to RHONE.com/locked on and use the code locked on today.
Hey, by the way, those of you who are in the chat, I see you, David Samuel Blaine. David Samuel Blaine is one of my regular listeners here, and he loves
Nice.
to stop by the chat. How you doing, buddy? Nice, and you gave me a nice little hi, Sully here. Hey, Adam Scott Bristol has been following me since the old Sully Baseball Daily Show. In fact, he came, if I'm not mistaken, he came to the live taping of my 1000th episode of the old Sully Baseball Show back in 2015. But he throws a question your way.
Yeah.
He says, Brett, who's Brett? That's H-Town. Come on, he's in his superhero garb. Brett, why do you think Alvarez struggled in the playoffs? Anything the Yanks or M's were doing differently pitching to him?
Well, the thing they didn't do is they didn't pitch a lot of low and inside unless your name's Robbie Ray. I mean, that's why Robbie Ray threw that fastball on the inside of the plate. And if you go back and look at the 4 at-bats prior to that versus Robbie Ray, that's the only time Yordan Alvarez got a hit against him. I'm still wondering why Scott Service pulled Sewald, because Yordan Alvarez is 1 for 7 with 6 strikeouts against Paul Sewald. I don't know why he pulled him. So, but why, to answer your question, Yordan Alvarez they've just pitched him well. And they have been putting the ball over the plate where he has not been effective. After game 1 and 2, in games 1 and 2, he had 3 balls that were hit over 100 miles per hour. From that point on, in the ALDS, he didn't get a hard hit ball over 100 miles an hour until game 4 against the Yankees, when he got that RBI single. And I believe that was off Clay Holmes. He's just, he wasn't as locked in as he should have been at the end of the season. He dealt with some hand injuries, and I don't know which one of his hands and how much they were hurt, but I don't think that's the reason. I just think they had a good game plan going in. Yordan Alvarez, it will be key this World Series for him to not expand the strike zone, for him just to put the bat on the ball and be patient. He did get a couple walks that last game, and I think he's less prone to continue a downward slump in this series because he's a very smart hitter for his age.
I think it's also, we're talking a 3-game series with Seattle and a 4 games. This is a grand total of 7 games that we're talking about. And in those 7 games, he hit a game-winning home run in 2 of them and got the game-tying hit. And in the finale against New York the other night, he got on base 3 times, including the hit that drove in the tying run. So I'm not going to go too bananas over the fact that a grand total of 4 games. He had 3 games where he was terrific, and 4 games, that didn't go so well. But hey, by the way, we've got one more thing from Adam Scott Bristol. We're taking questions here at segment 2. Doing a little loosey-goosey, but that's fine. That's why we do the live stream. And he says, it's a little ironic that the Astros have benefited from the odd bullpen decisions by Service and Boone, and Dusty's decisions have all worked out perfectly. Horses for courses, I guess. You all look at, I think that part of this has to do, maybe Dusty, who, let's remember, managed in the postseason in 1997, 2000, 2002, 2003, 2010, 2012, 2013, 2016, 2017, 2020, 2021, and 2022. Maybe he's learned a thing or two. I don't know.
Maybe you can teach an old dog new tricks, right?
This is the 4th consecutive decade where Dusty Baker has managed a team in the postseason. Maybe we start giving the guy a little bit of credit, but he also has, let's give the front office a lot of credit here too. They have a really good pitching staff that they've built for him, and let's give the pitching staff and the pitching coaches and the scouts and everyone credit for doing that. But yeah, give Dusty credit for knowing when to pull the pitchers, when not to pull the pitchers. Maybe he learned something from pulling Russ Ortiz too early in the 2002 World Series. I think that was the last thing my father uttered before he died was, Dusty, don't pull Ortiz. And then the next year he overcorrected by leaving. I think Mark Pryor is still on the mound in the middle of that rally in Game 6 with the Cubs. So maybe he's kind of learned the yin and the yang and being able to pull that off. But he has the horses. He's being able to do it right. And yeah, Aaron Boone makes weird decisions, as does Service. There's no getting around it. Aaron Boone took out his ace in the 6th inning and brought in Lou Trevino to pitch. What the hell is going on there?
I thought Aaron Boone was going to hire the vendor in section 120 in Yankee Stadium to pitch for him. I mean, that's the kind of Mickey Mouse stuff he was doing. But you mentioned the pitchers, you mentioned the front office and giving Dusty the pitchers. I've got a quick little anecdotal story about how the Astros got Framber Valdez.
Mm-hmm.
James Click shared the story, but obviously he wasn't there when Framber was around. He shared the story and it was relayed to him from the owner, Jim Crane. Okay. So they said typically the Astros will hold they'll basically book 6 to 7 pitching prospects in a day, and they'll end up seeing 10 or 12 because everybody has someone to push. And so it's at the end of the day, and there was a scout that they owed a favor to. He wanted them to see someone. The problem was the scout was 40 miles away, Sully. So they caved because they owed this guy a favor. They went to this makeshift field, and it was lit up by car headlights. It didn't even have lights. Okay.
Awesome. Yeah.
So Framber Valdez, who they didn't know, was throwing decent heaters, but nothing special. Okay, thanks. We've seen what we like, or we've seen it. We'll be back with you. Then he throws a curveball. The Astros scouts go, do that again? He throws another curveball. They're like, and again? And he threw another one. They go, one more time. And that's how the Astros got Framber Valdez. They saw that hook. They saw that curveball, which has become one of the most deadly breaking pitches in all of the major leagues. And they have guys like him, Luis Garcia. They have Christian Javier, who has reemerged. And really, if he had the innings qualified, he ranked top 3 in Ks per 9 and several pitching categories where this guy, Christian Javier, could be an ace on over half the teams in Major League Baseball right now. Truly the strength of this team. And the offense, we don't even need Jose Altuve apparently to hit because without him hitting, we swept 7 games. If you would have told me, Sully, here's a scenario, Brett. Jose Altuve goes over 23 to start the playoffs, but the Astros win every game. I'd be like, there's no way that's going to happen because he's been a key part of big playoff victories his whole career.
Well, and also let's remember a key player here. And the reason why I picked Seattle over Houston at the beginning of the year, and you and I talked a lot about this, I thought the loss of Correa was going to be devastating. I thought Correa meant more to that team than any player, and I stand by. He meant a huge amount to that team. But Jeremy Pena stepped in, and in a way that I did not think was possible. I thought he was a nice prospect, and I thought he had an impossible task, that is to fill the shoes of Carlos Correa. And while he didn't replace Carlos Correa, he made sure that shortstop position was not a hole, and he wound up taking the Carlos Correa postseason hero role to a T. He hits the home run to win the clincher against the Seattle, is the MVP of the series against New York, and highlighted by the 3-run homer that just looked like, oh, geez, maybe the Yankees are going to get off the mat. Who knows what's going to happen? The nanosecond he hit that 3-run home run, every single Yankee fan felt, oh, no, oh, dear, it's happening. And it happened. And so, Pena fitting in there was great. But let's give Dusty some credit, too, because Dusty's had a reputation in his career of leaning heavily on veterans and ignoring rookies a lot of times in his career. He put Pena in there and said, we're sticking with this kid. He he set the lineup. You saw the Yankees were playing
man.
We're playing Jenga and we're playing. We're playing Wordle with their lineup. The lineup was like sometimes the lineup changed in mid game. Well, now here's the leadoff. Now, like Oswaldo Peraza,
Someone told me he was looking for Bernie Williams to lead off.
he was at one point.
I mean,
he was digging up the body of Lou Gehrig. I mean, it was no idea what was going to happen.
Can Whitey Ford still play?
Well, I mean, he's more effective than some of the pitchers they've tried it out there. But the fact of the matter is that, yes, and of course, Yankees had a tremendous number of injuries to their team, but everyone had injuries. Michael Brantley didn't play for the Astros.
Yeah.
If they could have used him, every team has injuries. Yes. And like and I'm sorry. I mean, some of these players had fine seasons, but no one's going to look me in the eye and say this Yankee team that actually finished pretty strong. They slumped after the All-Star break, but they finished strong. They won the division by, I think, 9 games or something like that. Let me just put it this way, the last week was a non-issue. And 99 games and everything like that. You're telling me they didn't go to the World Series because Andrew Benintendi was hurt? Because DJ LeMahieu, because Michael King was hurt? Really? That's what we're going to say? They still had their top pitchers there. They still had several of their top relievers there, including Loaisiga, who they didn't use in some key situations against Houston. And they still had Aaron Judge, who was swinging and missing. And Donaldson, who's awful.
Oh gosh, Donaldson is a shell. He is not. I mean, he's a former MVP. I mean, he's been there, done that. He's had great moments as a major leaguer. He was at the highest level. I mean, you don't win MVP just because you're some like lucky guy that falls into the award. I mean, you get awarded that with reason and for cause. But to me, the worst look was after the game in Houston when Aaron Boone, Ishikawa, and I forget who else said, well, the roof was open. And had the roof been closed, I don't know if you remember this, Aaron Boone complained about the roof being open, being closed and not open during one game, I guess a couple years ago with the Astros. And I'm like, you're the Yankees. Like, all I hear from Yankees Nation is 27 rings, 27 rings. We're the Gruta, we are the gold standard. And Sully, I'm sorry, Yankees fans across America, y'all aren't the standard anymore. The Houston Astros are. The A in American League stands for Astros because we have hold on. We have put on a clinic of player development. We're ranked 28th in the major leagues, and we're still pumping out Hunter Browns. Yeah. We're still pumping out, Christian Javier's. And all I'm saying is this.
And Jeremy Pena. You lose Correa and you don't miss a point.
And you get him. And my thing is, it was embarrassing. I was embarrassed for them. Why make excuses for yourself? Yeah. Just take it on the chin. But the Astros are the first team in Major League history to beat the Yankees in 4 different playoff series. It's never been done before. That's huge.
I'm not going to go where that could go there because I'm going to go about praising this 2022 team, a team that has no baggage, a team where this team has been scrutinized. This team is giving a gigantic middle finger to the people who booed them. Said, okay, how about us now? How do you like us now? Is it still just cheating? You got to really be reaching. By the way, the optics of Boone in this postseason is that complaining about the roof being closed is the second dumbest thing he said in a press conference. Because the dumbest thing he said is he tried to motivate the Yankees by showing them 2004 American League Championship Series reel, the darkest moment of Yankees history. He was trying to choose to motivate the Yankees. You would think that someone who was part of that Curse of the Bambino lore with his walk-off home run against Tim Wakefield would understand that maybe a pep talk from Big Papi is not the optics that you would want to have.
That was something that I had actually forgotten about for a hot minute. Yeah, I was like, hold on, you're showing your rivals tapes. That would be like us showing a Dallas Cowboys or a Dallas team Or that would be like the Dodgers showing a Giants World Series when you're like, you remember when the Giants beat us and they were up. I'm
H-Town,
like, I couldn't
H-Town,
believe that.
H-Town, stop reaching for an example because there's no stupider example you can come up with.
You're right. Okay,
There,
you're
you
right.
no matter what you
I
say,
stand corrected.
nothing's dumber than saying, let's pump the Yankees up by showing them the darkest moment of their team's
By
history
showing the team getting beat by the
by the Red Sox. Seriously.
oh God, it's
It's unbelievable. I mean, so many great Yankee comebacks they've had in their history, and they don't pull one of those. You
well,
know, show the
Aaron
Jeter,
Boone's
show the Jeter flip when they beat Oakland in
yeah.
2001. What are we nuts here? But anyway, look at this segment. I want to talk a little bit about the fact that yes, the Astros are basically giving a middle finger to their haters, which is amazing to see. It's actually one of the reasons why, and Astros Twitter and Astro fans who've been, some of you have been writing nasty things or trying to bait me on stuff. I want you to listen to the words I'm about to say, and I'm about to alienate my own family. Okay, I have many relatives who grew up in Wilmington, Delaware, and are diehard Philadelphia Phillies fans. I went to a Phillies game this year. Could not have had a more fun time. Wore a Phillies hat. I've normally always rooted for the Philadelphia Phillies. Okay, you hearing what I'm about to say? Your pal Sully, who some of you think has unreasonable hatred for the Astros, I am rooting for the Astros to win the 22 World Series. This is the first time I've rooted for the Astros to win the World Series in months because I rooted for them to win the 2021 World Series against Atlanta. Okay. So, seeing in back-to-back years, I'm going to be saying "Go Astros" during the World Series is a very strange way to express uncontrolled hatred for a franchise. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that. Part of the reason why I am rooting for them is the middle finger quality. There is something beautiful that's like, oh, you think we just won because we cheated? Okay, watch us scrutinize everything we do, and we're going to sweep it. We're going to be better than ever. We're now talking about a perfect postseason, and the best thing we could come up with is opening up a roof. Okay, and of course, I'm such a Dusty Baker fan. He is, when he wins 20 games next year, he'll pass Walter Alston to
Wow.
be ninth in the all-time wins win total. As I rattled off all the teams he's taken to the postseason, some of them were dreadful when he showed up. Cincinnati was irrelevant. The Giants were about to move to freaking Tampa Bay before he showed up.
Wow.
And then he took an impossible situation with an Astros team with scrutiny, deserved scrutiny like we've never seen before, and took this team that could have fractured, could have splintered, could have become pariahs, and basically said, F all that, let's go. And has become the beloved centerpiece of this team. And I'm mainly rooting for the Astros because of Dusty Baker. Because if he wins, there is no argument to keep him out of the Hall of Fame. None. Zero. I don't think there is now. But if he wins, he will have matched Earl Weaver in World Series titles. Okay?
There you
He
go.
will have matched Leo DeRocher in World Series titles. And so, yeah, I'm this is a team that is showing up their critics. I'm not a football guy. Everyone thinks I'm a football guy with the Patriots. I don't care about the Patriots, but this is not too dissimilar from after some of the scandals involving them. They won 2 or 3 more Super Bowls. And, okay, how do you like us now? How do you like us now?
You know, I think it was said best when Chas McCormick, who really has become one of the best hitters in this postseason for this Astros team, said, we have a bitter taste in our mouth from last year. Like, we remember what happened last year. And Justin Verlander saying things, it's the intangibles for me, saying, I have a new perspective on life, on baseball life, on my opportunity to pitch, because I didn't know that I would actually be able to come back out and do this ever again. And now I have a daughter, I have a family. and my perspective has completely changed. This team has a reinvigorated Yuli Gurriel who has found the fountain of youth once again and is hitting the ball very well. Alex Bregman, who was basically playing with a broken hand in the World Series last year, perfectly healthy, climbing up the all-time RBI list for postseason by third baseman. And all while Altuve has been somewhat silent, Alvarez has lately gone a little cold, but this team top to bottom, Sully, they want to win this more than I think anybody else. Not just for them. I think they want to win it for the city. I think they want to win it for Jim Crane. And I think Jim Crane wants them to complete it. And, he said in that post game, one of our local guys asked him, what do you think about this run? Like 7-0. Like, how does that feel? I mean, did you see that coming? He said, no, you don't ever see something like that coming because the teams you're playing are in the playoffs. They're good. The Yankees are a good team. The Mariners are a good team. But we've put together a group of guys that they're close, they play well together, and they motivate each other. And I think it's kind of funny. Phillies fans are saying, we're going to bring it to Houston. We're going to let them know because we've never been able to express our disdain for the Astros. What they don't realize is the Astros have been through the fire and they weren't burned. They've been through the waters and they weren't consumed, Sully. I'm not going to start preaching, but the Houston Astros, I think, are poised. The Astros are going to be, I think, sitting very nicely at the end of this World Series. I really think this is a team, and I've said in an article 2 weeks ago, I think this is the best team, top to bottom, that the Houston Astros have ever assembled. Better than 19, better than 17, better than 21.
I agree. This is the best team of this run. I think it's the deepest pitching staff. If you had told me that they would lose Carlos Correa and have their best team, I also didn't see the return of Verlander coming. I didn't see him coming back and being this strong. I didn't see him coming back, quite frankly. But this is look at most people will be rooting against the Astros. We all know that. The Phillies bandwagon is going to be incredibly strong. And there's also, there are reasons for me personally to pull for the Philadelphia Phillies. One thing would be a gigantic billboard for teams to be motivated to try to get that sixth spot in the playoffs. They're like, well, what will it matter? We're just we could win the World Series. Oh my goodness. It's also a walking billboard for maybe Dave Dombrowski is who you want to run your organization. Yeah, he'll trade all your prospects away, but you'll have a couple trips to the World Series under your belt. And isn't that the whole point of it? And also, I like it when my stars win titles. And Bryce Harper, all those years playing for Washington, he leaves, they win the World Series. Harper's a wonderful player. And as I said, I like it when superstars win World Series. I think it makes me happy when stuff like that happens. Nothing against the teams that are filled with grind them out lunch pail guys, but I like my stars to get rings. And but for Astros fans, at least from my perspective, beyond just sort of the middle finger of, you think we just weren't going to, okay, now you think it's just trash cans? Look at us. We're going to sweep our way through and no one's doing anything. Maybe we should have the trash cans. Then the Yankees could have won a game or two. I think the middle finger quality for that, but also for Astros fans, if they win the World Series, and if anyone tries to give them grief about this, that, or the other things, like, we won in 2022 when every move we did was scrutinized. So, give us that one. Get off her back. Donovan Burrell, whose text is a little too big to post up here. He said he's a Yankee fan who's rooting for the Astros. Can you believe that?
Wow.
He says, my Yankees got destroyed by the Astros. I'm going to root for you guys because I don't want the Phillies to win the World Series. Every time a team from Philadelphia wins the World Series, there's an economy collapse.
Well,
and 2008,
let's save the economy. Go
2008, 1980 didn't look so great. And let's not forget the 1929 Philadelphia A's won the World Series and the Great Depression started. So, you might be onto something there, Donovan Burrell. You might be onto something. Or you may be bonkers. Here's what I really want, and we're going to talk Phillies, and I'll praise the Phillies in another episode too. Here's what I really want. I want 7 games. I know you want a perfect. I mean, if they get a perfect postseason, then having Dusty Baker's name on a perfect postseason, that would be his grand legacy. That would be his masterpiece. I want a 7-game series. I want a game 7 that is the blank game, the Alvarez game, the Altuve game, the Harper game, the Segura game, the Maldonado game, whatever it is, the game that have people calling it like that 6th game between Texas and St. Louis in 2011, like the game with Madison Bumgarner coming out 3-2 final in Kansas City, like the finale, including the Rajai Davis home run, the rainstorm, and the Cubs rallying and the Indians rally. They were called the Indians then. Don't get on me. They were called the Indians then. That amazing game 7 between Cleveland and Chicago. I want a game like that.
Yeah.
And while I really would love to see Dusty win, more than anything, I want a complete, wonderful game that captures the imagination of anyone who happens to be watching. That's what I want. Is that asking too much?
I don't think it's asking too much, but my question is, in a real world scenario, do the Phillies have the endurance when it comes to arms in the bullpen and guys off the bench like the Astros do?
No.
I think the Phillies, though, win a couple games in this. I think it goes to 6, and I think Houston clinches in game 6 at home. That's just how I'm seeing it, because I think the Astros win 1 in Philadelphia. That's all you need to come back to Houston. They win 2 in Philadelphia. They get the feel goods. They get the crowd. They get 2 out of 3. All right, we got, we're only down 3-2. We got to force a game 7. I just don't see the Astros not unloading all their bullets in their clip in the bullpen, starters, whoever they got to secure that game 6 victory over the Philadelphia Phillies. But I wonder, because both the Astros and the Phillies have had timely hitting. The Astros haven't hit a ton, but they've hit when it's counted.
Right.
You're going to have 2 teams that have good pitching and timely hitting. Where's the water going to break? Where's the crack in the foundation? And who exposes that crack first?
Well, I think the thing that, and we'll wrap up on this here. I think the thing that's going to help Philadelphia the most to try to steal a game in Houston is that they'll be able to line their pitching staff up exactly where they want. Obviously, Houston will be able to do that as well. But they'll be able to start Nola and Wheeler, who both have been tremendous this postseason, especially Wheeler. And, you could see them matching 0 for 0 with Houston, and someone like a Harper or a Schwarber hitting one, in upper deck and pumping their fists and everything like that. I think that the starting pitching will be a wash in game 1 and 2. And I think that that's the thing that will help Philadelphia try to get home field advantage and steal a game. If they could steal a game in Houston, then they're going to. Look at I'm picking right now. I'm picking Houston in 5. That's my pick. But if they steal a game in Houston and then line up for to win either games 3 or 4 at home, then we have ourselves a series. Then it could be.
Sure.
Then it'll go back to Houston, and if Philly can just sort of unload everything in game 6 and force a game 7, and of course a game 7 by definition is a coin toss, and then we could have a great series. I think the Phillies are going to win one of the first 2 games, and then I think Houston's going to unload. That's what I think is going to happen, and I think they're going to win 5.
Wow, I like that. So. Because you would think,
which means I just cursed the Astros. I'm always wrong. That means the Phillies are going to sweep them because nothing makes sense in this postseason.
Nothing does make sense.
Nothing
You're
makes
right.
any
We
sense.
so we actually had one of our local radio hosts, Matt Thomas from Sports Talk 790, and Eric said, I think the Padres are going to make it to the NLCS. And both Matt Thomas and I were like, haha, the Padres, they're not going to get past the first round. And what do? They got past the first round. We're like, the Dodgers, of course they're going to be in the World Series. Or the Mets, of course they're
Or the
they're gone.
Braves, yeah.
They exit, or the
300 win
Braves.
teams.
It's insane. That's why you play the playoffs. That's why people are scrutinizing the play. Oh, you can't let these guys with 80 wins. It's not fair to the other teams. No, it's fair. It's called you come to the ballpark, and if you don't play well, you lose. That's the bottom line, kids, because HTown Wheelhouse said so.
That's right. Well, hey, we're running a bit long here. So, H-Town, tell people where they can listen to your terrific show.
Yeah, YouTube. You can check us out. We go live just about every episode. You can check us out on Apple, Google, Spotify, Odyssey. And just remember, we're your team every day, and we're always positive, always Stros.
And you can follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and Instagram. I'm your pal Sully at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Showing nothing but Astros love, and we'll probably get no credit for it. This has been Locked On MLB. Recording this on the 25th day of October 2022. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan.